Hey, Ray, we're here. We're
Okay.
for our second spot. Of course, this series has been going on since 2008. We figured that out,
Mm.
but the the one with you was about a little over 2 months ago, and the
Yep.
Ukraine wars broke out right after we talked about
Mm.
it.
Mm.
Ironic because we were talking about we are a silly people, and I was somewhat critical of America, the way we're fighting with each other. But I notice Ukrainians and Russians are essentially the same race and very similar cultures in many ways. Russian-speaking people and white people, and they're both,
Slavs.
huh?
Slavs.
Slavs, all Slavs, yeah, and they're attacking each other. So for us to be attacking, each other because of our differences, it's common all over the world.
Mm.
It's spreading. But yeah, we haven't had a chance to talk anything about the Ukraine, but let's get back to that in a little bit. The idea of being a silly people was that we can't stand up against other groups, other peoples, if we're divided, and we saw that.
And finally, new rule, you're not going to win the battle for the 21st century if you are a silly people. And Americans are a silly people. That's the classic phrase from Lawrence of Arabia, when Lawrence tells his Bedouin allies that as long as they stay a bunch of squabbling tribes, they will remain a silly people. Well, we're the silly people now. Do you know who doesn't care that there's a stereotype of a Chinese man in a Dr. Seuss book? China. All 1.4 billion of them could give a crouching tiger flying fuck. Because they're not a silly people.
During the election, but as far the other thing that's been happening is the COVID just doesn't seem to go away. We've noticed that again. And what's the news today? Is it Bill Gates? What
Mm.
hear about that?
I just read that article. So
Oh,
like me, we all are getting that breakthrough infection. I believe he said he had the two, the series of two vaccinations, and then booster, and then the second booster.
right.
Yeah, but so that was my case, and as happened with lots of people, still got it. I was thinking probably, who knows, but the barbershop choir I was in this retirement community, there were at least 7 people who came down with it. My guess is that super spreader event was one of our rehearsals, or one of our performances.
Oh, okay. So you got it singing then. And
Yes,
it's
which
surprising
is
me
you throw out a lot of virus, the aerosols when you're singing.
right.
You're about
And,
to show that clip is about sneezing on a subway. That's cute.
Here. Let me show you
Oh,
that. So
okay.
I was about to show that. We're talking about how does a virus spread, and a lot of people don't realize what we're dealing with. Spread. Yeah, and you're
And you shed it from your system.
right.
And early in the infection, when you don't know it, you might be shedding the most virus.
Right. The shedding of the virus creates a contagious situation.
Yeah.
And this is what I saw, like, before we even had the COVID. We were talking about how
But while
the
a cold
virus
may
can
be a
spread.
nuisance, what it can trigger is an everyday miracle.
The miracle of spreading a virus. Why is it?
It's nothing less than our own personal human hurricane. A sneeze,
This is something I picked up in China.
generating a huge propulsive force.
And warning.
Using
be
specialist
careful with this.
imaging techniques, we can now
Might
see
not
the
wanna
powerful
watch it. It's
air
kinda
currents
ugly.
it creates.
There's the sneeze. And they've got special lighting, so watch what's really happening.
source of this hurricane is a compression of hundreds of muscles in the body. They eject the sneeze at up to 100 miles an hour, dispersing it into 40,000 separate droplets, each containing a payload of bacteria and viruses, whose sole purpose is to pass on the infection.
This was actually before the COVID came out when I
Which raises the
watched
question,
this.
just how far can a sneeze go? By positioning agar dishes to trap the fallout, scientists have found out. At 2 to 3 meters, the biggest droplets are still falling. These are just about visible, around the width of a human hair.
This is why a lot of people
But
got
that's
so
not the end
upset
of the
about
sneeze,
people not wearing
because as
masks.
the droplets travel, they become smaller. Some might even remain airborne for the rest of your journey. And these smaller particles begin to divide and split further until they're too small to be seen by the naked eye. But they're still there. In tests, agar dishes placed 10 meters from a sneeze were easily infected. In fact, with assistance from air currents, a sneeze can travel as far as 40 meters. So in a crowded carriage, we're all in danger. A sneeze contains millions of microorganisms which can survive for several days, traveling wherever you do.
Understand, because I was from China, and at that point I'd spent most of my time in China for over the 8 or 10 years. So it was when everybody decided to wear a mask, it was all just the thing to do. It's like combing your hair. You wouldn't walk around without combed hair. So I was just shocked when I realized the fight that we had, and it comes down to the idea of democracy or autocracy, and what do you do to govern a country? And a lot of people are saying, well, we're not a democracy. And I maintain that we are. It's a vote-driven system, maybe not totally clean because of the Senate representation, the House, even the Supreme Court is appointed by an elected person. The President of the United States appoints all the Supreme Court justices. And of course, we elect the president indirectly too. We work through electors. It's a system set up in the Constitution. So, I don't buy this democracy, this idea that we're not a democracy. But in China, they certainly are authoritarian. And I think the people in America flashed on that. As soon as they started to talk about lockdown and wearing masks and everything, it's like, are we living in a free country or is it authoritarian? And you're kind of in a Republican area. There was a lot of pushback to the mask to start with, wasn't there?
Well, I don't know what it was like in Michigan, but I remember going to one of those get my gas filled, and 2 guys were, in your face without the mask. So
Oh, yeah.
this was early on before we had any vaccines and the like.
Well, I really thought it was a bad start because we didn't have good testing and we didn't have any kind of vaccine or anything. And President Trump tried to minimize the impact of what we were experiencing, and he didn't want to panic. He wanted us to continue to be successful in business, and a lockdown was not going to help business at all. At least that's what he felt. So China locked down immediately in like the end of January of 2020. And they were locked down for about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. And then they had the virus behind them. And there was gradually all the masks came off and they were free. And we had like big fighting in the streets over whether to put on masks and things of that nature. And it has to do with the people would rather take a risk of an illness than be a slave to the government, do exactly what you're told by the government. There's just something really annoying about that to Americans. And Chinese couldn't understand it. Why don't you guys wear masks? And I said, well, you know, a lot of Americans would rather die than take orders from the government. And
we have a little bit right now, if you've been watching the reaction in Shanghai to now over a month, a lot of people have been locked down, and it's now been even more stringently enforced. And what information does get out is that plenty of people are pissed.
Can you review? I mean, hasn't been a complete turnabout where suddenly the U.S. is putting this behind us, and they call it a post-pandemic situation.
We've also had
Now,
a million
Russia
people
is-
die.
Pardon?
We also had almost 1 million people die.
Right. But China is just going into that now, right? Their vaccines aren't as effective as ours, right?
Aren't as effective, but 3 of them still deals with it okay. The problem is the people most vulnerable are the elderly, and only 60% of their elderly have gotten it, and even lower percentages in the countryside, and they do well with public health in general in comparison to other countries, but they don't spend nearly as much of their GDP on healthcare. So they couldn't do a big surge of people needing ICUs and such. So I think the World Health Organization, or one of those people, there was studies done, and I think including it with people at the Indiana University doing modeling of it, that if China were to stop what they're doing right now, the total lockdown, that 1.5 million people would die.
I see. Yeah. So they instinctively knew that they had to shut it down early. And similarly, it doesn't have to be an authoritarian government. Australia could shut it down as well. I just heard they had about 10% of the death rate per person population as what the U.S. did, and they got into very aggressive lockdowns as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and we did it our way, and now we seem to have it behind us. So I get annoyed at people say that Trump was all wrong because he had a position that he thought was the best for the country, and he was elected to do that job. And so you got to give him a chance, right? I see a similar situation we have with Biden as well. You know?
And well, in 10 years, 20 years, they'll be writing all this stuff up, and we'll be out of our tribal identities, or somebody in the future will not be so tied to I'm a Trumpist or I'm an anti-Trumpist, all that type of stuff. So it'll be a bit more objective. So it'll be interesting to see what the analysis is come when it's all written up in 20 years.
Yeah. So Gates was a ringleader. I saw his presentation in 2014, and we also had this when I was teaching the people at the hospital at the Guiyang Airport. Let me see if I can share
Public
a
health
screen.
people.
Yeah,
people
they were exactly public health people.
Barnesy worked on another
so
floor.
this
There were
was
documents
a
she needed to
movie
sign. He
made.
picked her up from the airport.
Hang on, I'm going to
He picked her up.
This was a movie made in 2011 called Contagion, and it fairly accurately predicted that we're going to be having a virus come. So anyway, that's what we watched, and I taught them English from that.
From the airport?
Yes.
Yeah. Hang on just a second here. I'm trying. Okay, now we're getting back into
You were
it.
talking about Republicans, Democrats here in the States, but uh, this is interesting for me as a white guy to see what other white people, whether you're Dems or Republicans, GOP, are the kids here watching some of these very, very interesting, dramas.
By the way, you've been following this drama in Washington, D.C. with it's kind of a trial, but it's not really a trial. They're just having a hearing to give advice to the executive branch, right? You've got a attorney general that's going to decide whether there's any charges to be brought, right? Yeah, the other thing in China is they've almost totally cut out immigration, and we have too, to a large degree. Except I think we've got illegal immigration coming in, but this immigration, along with abortion, these are big separator issues that we're having in the country. I think it's really hard for people to know who to support, whether Republican or Democrat or independent. Quite honestly, I'd like to see more independence because it's a strange feeling. But in China, I was always careful about what I said because I didn't want to get prosecuted or kicked out of China. And I found that people were quite open the way they talked. They didn't criticize the government with respect to the big policies, but a lot of them talked about the government, and but back in the U.S., you're either a Republican or a Democrat to a large degree. If you say something in support of some Republican, you got Democrats in your face. If you say something good about a Democrat, you got Republicans in your face. And I find that every bit as suppressing of free speech as living in China. China, they had one party rule, and you were supposed to watch what you said, don't criticize the government. But I didn't think the
Cancel
government.
culture.
Yeah. They don't seem to have that going on in China so much. At least when I was there, they're getting more aggressive in terms of locking down certain businesses and controlling businesses a lot more. They're
The
losing
little
their
pinks thing, if you've read about that. There
what?
is online nationalists, nationalism, and they call it the little pinks, pink color. So anyway, there is some of that going on. We've been away. I've been away from China for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. So maybe I would see some of that, or maybe if I was back there, it would be about the same, people interacting with us. And we talk to a lot of people. It's not just a narrow band.
Right.
And, when you speak the language, like some of these younger folks are, they're interacting easily in Chinese. So I get a sense, that face to face with many people, there's still a lot of civility toward us foreigners and awareness of it. But,
it's going against foreigners, but not like some of the racial problems we have here, But anyway, it's a difficult area. And
I live in a retiree area. I don't know if that helps as people get into their 70s and 80s and 90s with some of the strident, things they might have said as a younger person. But you're in Northwest Michigan. So.
Northwest Michigan, right?
Yeah.
And
maybe there's a little more of an edge to it there.
Well, I think people are just sick of all politics. And, there's something that's really bothered me about this whole political thing. Of course, I was very active politically all my life, and I was a township supervisor for 12 years. But in China, they have distinctions between the military people and politicians. And somebody asked the question, who's worthy of more glory, a politician who, no, a soldier who wins 100 battles and kills thousands of people, or a politician who gets the objective of the country without having to go to war. And I think I'd like to see the country just rethink this whole feeling about politicians. And if your people are smart enough, maybe they don't have to go to war. Maybe you can get what you want, be clear about your objectives, get what you want without going to war. And I think that's worthy of honor, maybe even if some of them are lying, if they're avoiding a war, that's not all bad, So
We have that going on with Taiwan.
yeah,
Will Taiwan want to reunite with the mainland? They go into it, they're okay with it. They like the idea of joining with their brothers again, or is it going to be war? And that will the U.S. get involved, and will we get into a major battle?
well, isn't that a similar situation where you've got Ukraine and Russia are white, right? And they Slavic people are very similar. And then you have Taiwan and mainland China. They're both Chinese, right?
Chinese.
Share the same culture.
Right.
So what do they have to fight about? Right? That's the question. And then Japanese, they're also Asians. I remember mainland Chinese people, they used to tell me, oh, I hate the Japanese. And I used to say, well, you look Japanese to me, It's hard to tell the difference between a Japanese and a Chinese, right? So, yeah, the Chinese helped build this country. So they built the railroad from the West Coast all the way right into the Rocky Mountains somewhere, wasn't it? Utah?
Utah's where they met, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing I'd like to see is these countries start working together. We don't realize how much money has been lost by these wars and this trade, because all of this massive trading created cash, gross domestic product, and that just shrank. When the trading shrank,
I don't know what's happening with Walmart, but it's easy to get. It used to be get good quality, cheap products made in China at Walmart. And then in the news yesterday, today, all that stuff of, will the Trump era tariffs be taken off of the low end products that have nothing to do with strategic, with technological, with
technology, yeah,
technology, the stuff, shoes and textiles and such. That would help us with our inflation, and that was brought up. We have bad inflation now, and to let the Chinese goods in again would help.
Let me try to change this to the beginning, where we talked about your background in the last meeting that we had, but you've got 24 years in China and a master's in foreign affairs from Columbia?
Right.
Yeah, okay. So you know something about China. Probably double what I've got in China. But yeah, it's how do you get these cultures working together again? For 20 years, we worked together, but we let them cheat on some trade deals, I think. They were too aggressive. And all of a sudden, all at once, Trump said, this is enough. We're not going to allow you to bend the rules or anything like that. That was when that Huawei executive got arrested. And it's just been going downhill since then. Now, suddenly, Russia joined in, and they went to they were banned from the Olympics And wasn't it ironic that Putin and Biden met during the Olympics in Beijing and kind of agreed on what was going to happen in the Ukraine? And it was,
Uh, Putin and Xi.
oh, did I say Biden?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, let me say that again. Putin and Xi met in Beijing during the Olympic Games, which is to promote peace. And ironically, they talked about the coming war between Ukraine and military action, right? Between Ukraine and Russia. And that seems to be spreading. That's still spreading. It's united Russia, or it's united Europe with the United States and NATO, and a lot of countries are thinking about joining NATO now. Just about the opposite of what Russia had intended. So who knows what way that's going to go, you know?
If you want to back up a bit about the mercantilist policies, how China has aggressively gone and you say stolen our technology, but to put it into context, that is the case. But some of our heroes stole British technology in the early Industrial Revolution era to do textile production, and bring that technology to Northeast United States. And these people are we read about, and they did a great job, and rah rah rah. And then in the United States early on, we had high tariffs that were protecting our own industries, hothouse industries, from a Britain that would otherwise overwhelm the markets. And so it's just different eras do that. But yes, we I don't think we want to make the shoes and textiles that are in the Walmart now. We don't do so well. I think the guy that does Apple manufacturing says we don't have the type of people here who would do well assembling an Apple phone or a computer.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So internationally, there's still room for more trade, but it's
a huge issue. All that stuff about China controlling the rare earths. Indeed, we need to do more. I was reading that we have cobalt, of all things, in Wisconsin.
Really?
Some rare earths in the Mountain Pass mine in California, and other places, lithium coming out of Nevada. So those are things that we can, not be dependent on China for. But again, it's very polluting, refining these things.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, the thing that I've noticed is, it's like we're almost in a war of words, criticizing each other. And what is it? Who knows what's the best? Like, who knows what's best for governing China? Who knows what's best for governing the U.S.? We got two ideas. There's Democrats and Republicans, and when you listen to them, they sound about the same. They're criticizing each other and making up incredibly elaborate conspiracies, right? And I look at it like a football game. If the U.S. is a team and we're supposed to be working together in a capitalist market, how do we work together? Detroit Lions are not a good example, but suppose everybody on the football team was criticizing the leader, refused to block, or even, helped the opponent criticize your leadership. That team wouldn't be much of a team. It wouldn't win very often, and that's kind of what we're looking at in the U.S. So I'm not sure when we're going to turn this around. We've got to get people being nice to each other, I think. and how does that work? We had Democrats really criticized the Republicans when they were in office for the trying to control the border and trying to control the trade, all that stuff, and then the racism, and then the Republicans turn around and blame the same things on the Democrats. So one thing that's absent is what should we be doing with our legislature besides criticizing each other? There's a lot of things that this country needs to be doing, like trade policies and things of this nature.
Well, now China is just Democrats and Republicans all agree to. There's bills going through the system now that'll set this and that policy for China. Very, very harsh.
Yeah. And the question is, should we be backing off from this trade with China? Certainly, if they're going to make a lot of money from it and use it to buy weapons, I don't know we want to subsidize that, right? So we would hope that they would do education and things of that nature to improve the world. But, I would say in the last 2 to 5 years, it's really gone the other way. China getting more militaristic. U.S. has been more militaristic too, right? So it's been getting picked up all over the world.
You mentioned immigration, the whole thing of letting in more Chinese. That would be we got to keep those people out. The Vance that wrote Hillbilly Elegy and is now the Republican candidate for Senate from Ohio, but he was saying we don't want 100,000 Indian and Chinese computer programmers here.
Yeah.
But can we supply it ourselves? And then the whole thing of keeping us in at the front of high tech. We do need these immigrants to come in. The Chinese and Indians and the Russians and whoever, as individuals, are applying to come here. Some of them are going to be, stealing the technology and all that stuff. But a lot as individuals are just interested in having a good career, and the job opportunities with the good money and all the rest are here. So hard to do.
I favor a lot of this immigration because it helps in two ways. They make money. When people come to the U.S. and work hard, as most of these immigrants do, they pay taxes and they send a lot of money back to their home countries. It's called remittances, right? So you don't have to send as much foreign aid to somebody if their relatives are supporting them and sending them money from the U.S. So that's a good angle to it. And as the population grows, you have more people paying taxes, and those of us on Social Security, we want young people to pay taxes and help us get by, right? So there's two angles to that, and our birth rate is falling like crazy. So
let me throw out another little thing. I was in Northeast China for 3 years as an English teacher in Harbin. One semester, I was teaching at a university that had some Russian students, continuously had them, they were studying Chinese. One group was studying international affairs, and the university had me teaching them English. They were there to learn Chinese, but as diplomats, they would need to know English as well. So I got to deal with them, and it was a very interesting experience. Month or 6 weeks ago, I got one of those people was coming to the United States to study English. On further thought, I've lost contact with him, but was he avoiding being a conscript into the Russian
This is a Russian
army?
army age, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be early 20s. So all those different factors, which doesn't fit the more simplistic thing we get into in the political debates here about seeing them in simpler terms. These are individuals facing different issues, and what can the United States benefit from hardworking people who do things like figure out how to get out of Russia.
Yeah. I guess the biggest difference between an authoritarian country and a democratic country is the number of people that have the authority to solve problems. If you're in a democratic situation, capitalist country, if you can raise money from any sources, you can create an idea and you can make money and produce things. But we don't realize in an authoritarian country, it all goes back to the boss ultimately. He can delegate down, but in the end, there's one guy that's going to have the yes or no on anything that's important. And the more people you have thinking about something and working on something, the better solution you're going to get. So as we go into more authoritarianism in the U.S., I think we're losing our flexibility. We're losing the number of ideas that we have to solve problems. So yeah, that's another thing that we're concerned about. Where else are we?
In terms of there's polling done about the Hispanics possibly being a good block of GOP voters. So, I don't know what's going on with the Chinese American or the Asian American scene. I believe they're more tending toward Democrats, but you're a good Republican, and you see in your circles, there are people that are attracted to the policies that you've been going with for your career.
Well, you say good Republican, but I've had people call me a rhino.
In name only.
A Republican in name only, yeah.
Right.
Actually, I'm getting more interested in the independents. I did run in an independent campaign for township supervisor in 1996, and I did okay, but I had no intention of winning. I just thought it was important to raise the issues that I cared about, and I'd like to see more people be able to do that. Why do you have to raise all this corporate money to sell yourself and get people's attention? I think people expect to be entertained by the news, and they want to be outraged. And a lot of people are getting really excited about angry ideas.
But also the feel-good stories, too. There's the outrage, but also feel-good.
Yeah, we've got feel-good stories, I guess, yeah. But I think the air is covered with a lot of this negativity. And I think the individuals...
Us retirees like feel-good.
What's that?
Us retirees like feel-good. But
yeah.
Me, as a 20-year-old, I was more revolutionary.
Yeah, I think I had a sociology teacher. He said, if you're not if you're not a communist when you're 20, you don't have a heart. If you're not a capitalist when you're 40, you don't have a brain. So I always like that remark. So yeah, going forward, I would like to see people start working together more and more, kind of like a football team. We've been promoting. Who knows who's responsible for playing the quarterback? If the president is the quarterback, who picks him? You know, who picks the quarterback of a football team? It might be the coach, might be the general manager, might be the owner. Who knows? You do know you're competing and you're on one side or another, right? But right now,
You
I
mean
think,
it isn't voted by the people on the team?
pardon?
You mean it's not voted by the people on the team?
No,
It's
no,
not,
they don't vote.
oh,
Yeah,
oh,
people
really?
fall in. Yeah, people buy into it or they don't. You know. So yeah, that's what we need to be looking at is how are we going to get people to buy into what we have now, because there's a tremendous danger out there of all the different countries sabotaging each other, and nuclear weapons and all these kind of ways of screwing with each other. There's no limit to how low we can go if we don't start cooperating, right? So yeah, I'm worried about that. I think this business with the congressional investigations, all that needs to wrap up and find out why people are upset. I hear people say it's not a democracy, but we had a lot of people fighting a lot of wars. They thought they were fighting for democracy, right? And now you got a lot of Republicans, probably majority of Republicans, think that the elections were rigged, or that we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. And they don't say democracy, right? And the thing you get from both parties for the last 12 to 14 years is he's not my president. Now, if you have about a third of the public saying that, Republicans say the Democrat is not my president, the Democrat says Republican is not my president, or the independents say neither one of them is my president, right? That's almost 2/3 of the people saying not my president. And when I grew up, I thought that was the president worked for everybody. He's elected by everybody, right? Supposed to be doing the best he can for everybody. So that idea has changed just in, I would say, 12 to 14 years. That idea of not my president has been catching on. And I think people need to buy into the idea that you have to have somebody in charge of this business. The American government is by far the biggest business in the world. You add in the military and all the deficit spending and all that stuff. It's huge. And to think you can just run that without anybody being in charge is ridiculous. Why is Congress spending their time on social issues when there's so many things that can be done better in this country if they work together on it? Yeah, so that's what I worry about. I think that the people have to find a way to work together and listen to each other, because that's where the new ideas come from. The people with ideas and talking it over and gaining a consensus, that's where the ideas, the innovations come from. So, yeah, how are we going to get that to come back up, do you have any ideas on that? How do people get to buy into this idea of government of the people, by the people, for the people? Because there's not a lot of people are supportive of those who come forward to take office. So
I don't know.
anyway,
Just, is China's model that they're putting out the better one? We've lost nearly 1 million people to COVID. They have lost small number,
right.
and they talk about how good it is that they can, shut everything down to deal with the virus. This might not work for the Omicron, but those are we're not talking about that specific detail about changes in the virus, but about the ability to top down. You're talking about the quarterback, controlling things, and we would have a guy that doesn't listen to what the quarterback says, and you don't do well on the field in those situations. Do you do better if you have, Putin's gone into, we assume that the Russian army was great and it was a very much top-down thing, and that
Right.
the model they have of generals do all the deciding is not seeming to work well. So all these things are up for reevaluation. All those, the guy that wrote The End of History, I was reading an article in the New York Times yesterday about the guy that talked in the early 1990s. He's talked about many different issues, but the whole thing of that liberal democracy thing is coming in and out of style, and less in style in the States now, but in fact it might actually be stronger than we realize, however messy it is. And all these things we don't know.
Yeah. You don't know how fast people can change, too. When there was an attack, 9/11, people came together pretty quickly. And it went
The Iraq War,
yeah,
not the best of choices.
not the best decision, right? But yeah, it's a difficult thing to turn around. If you look at the freedoms that we have, we still have a lot of personal freedom, but I think the media is appealing to negative feelings, that there's excitement that goes with the anger of people doing things wrong, and wanting to punish them. And so I think we're seeing a lot more of that now, where a lot of people want to send everybody to jail that was involved with the that insurrection, right? China had an interesting concept. They send the leaders to jail, but the people that followed them, they just have to apologize and they can get back to work, right? So we've had that situation in China too, where people have been leaders of opposing the government, and they'll get in trouble, but the ones that follow them often do not, So, well, what else we got to talk about here?
Nukes was one topic.
The what?
Nukes, nuclear weapons.
Oh, right.
We're facing now with will our doctrine, our way back when, 1950s, we got tactical nukes in case we were losing in Europe. We would go to that. Now the Russian doctrine is similar to that. If they're losing, then nukes are an option. The tactical stuff, battlefield. But for them, the Ukrainian forces aren't in concentrated positions.
Right.
Does that topic that's in the news right now, and a lot of people are worried about it, is that something for you in Northwest Michigan? That
should we be worried about that? It's almost like game over if it ever did happen, right? And I don't know anybody crazy about blowing up the world, My
parents did some RV, camping in your part of the country. I forgot the names of these places, but Sault Ste. Marie or whatever it is. And there was a strategic air command place, and they were camping on that as that was decommissioned. But you had some of that there historically. Some people who were involved in keeping that triad going of the at least one part of our system would still be functioning and could get back at the Soviet Union if they sent nuclear missiles toward us.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem to be an interesting topic for you right now. That's fine.
Well, yeah, I guess the thing that I would like to see is people working together. You know, it's I have a very dear friend of mine that was said the election was stolen for sure. You know, and you couldn't convince him of anything else. And I said, but this insurrection was a bad deal. What would happen if Trump had been successful in stopping the certification of the election? What would happen next? The next thing would be big fights in all the states, whether to confirm the election as it was voted on or not. And if they couldn't decide, it would go to Congress. And then it'd be one state, one vote, which would be a Republican vote. So if you had a situation where Democrats, would they win by 5-6 million votes and the Electoral College, and suddenly had the election stolen or reversed, would there be civil war? I think it'd be likely to have civil war, but if not, would we have elections anymore? Because if the 240-year history of elections was stopped, what system would you create to replace it? Are you going to have a new constitution? A lot of people think that the Constitution is fine, that it's the politicians that's a problem, or the people are the problem. But the Constitution is just a piece of paper. It's only as good as the commitment of the people to support it. And I don't think the people realize that in order to have a constitution that means anything, it has to be sort of supported by the people. And you got to get back to this, not my president. If you don't support who the people elect to be president, do you have a democracy? I mean, regardless of how you define it. If you're not going to support the people that are elected, do you even have a democracy? Or is it some kind of banana republic or some strongman dictator? That's what I'm worried about. I think once you get into with the technology, with all the cameras and all that stuff, face recognition, wiretapping, all of that stuff, once the democracy is lost, it's going to be awfully hard to get past that technology and restore it. You know, so yeah, this in Supreme Court. What what happened there? You know, we have a precedence that's completely turned around, and a lot of people wanted that to happen, but it's going to be hard getting the people to focus on anything but social issues. Yeah, so it's a big problem, and I'd like to think of something hopeful to end this discussion on. Right? What is the hopeful thing? And the only thing I've come up with is Trump has put a mirror up to the American people, and his feelings about a lot of the issues are the same as a lot of Americans, and it's largely a negative proposal to be against what other people are doing. And we've got so many good people in government that have maintained our standard of living. Just to routinely take care of medical bills through, half the people in the country go through Medicare and all that stuff. It's really difficult to change that to a different system. And where is a different system that's any better, you know? So anyway, that's the
How
main
can
things that
you're coming from the Rust Belt. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, which was the southern part of the Rust Belt. These issues you talked about, what Trump was saying, but the deindustrialization of, we were both in China, and a lot of those jobs in the period that we were there had left the United States and gone to places like China and Mexico and now Vietnam and such. But there is you're looking for some bits of hope, that Columbus, Ohio Intel plant that's bringing, for computer chips.
Yeah.
The AI manufacturing out of Detroit, where you went to a school near there, and that school sent a lot of people to China as teachers, and you were part of that. But the whole Detroit area getting, the next phase of industrialization, maybe there is hope that parts of the United States will get back to, being engaged in the way that would be, that would give people that wrote the Hillbilly Elegy. I'm from Kentucky, and that's from the eastern part of Kentucky. But the white folks that he was talking about, who had didn't have job opportunities, and huge amount of drugs and the like. What gives those type of people hope? And it can be part of the new technologies coming.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of education that has to take place with mathematics, electronics, and all of these things. It's going to it's going backwards now with the schools getting let out for COVID and things like that. But yeah, I think people have to have motivation of see something better coming, right? And if they can't get that hope up, like leaders that can actually inspire people to send their kids to school and get them to work harder, that's a big deal.
You also brought up the